Imagine walking into your own mansion, unannounced, and discovering a scene you'll never forget. That's exactly what happened to Alexander Reed, one of America's youngest billionaires. He expected to find his father asleep, but instead, he froze in disbelief, because there, in the dimly lit room, the maid wasn't cleaning, she was holding his father's hand, whispering something that shattered Alex's heart, and changed his life forever. Alexander Reed wasn't just any businessman, he was the face of Silicon Valley's new generation of billionaires. At only 35, his name was plastered across magazines, his speeches went viral online, and investors fought for just a minute of his time. From sunrise to midnight, his life revolved around boardrooms, negotiations, and private jets. On the outside, he had it all: wealth, fame, and power. But on the inside, something was missing. For months, he hadn't seen his father, Henry Reed, a man who had once been larger than life. Henry was a decorated war veteran, a man who raised Alex with discipline, honor, and love. But age and illness had stripped away the strength that once defined him. Each time Alex thought of his father, guilt gnawed at him. He had promised to visit more, but business always came first. That Friday night, sitting alone in his San Francisco penthouse, Alex made a decision. No assistants, no bodyguards, no chauffeurs. He booked a last-minute flight, determined to arrive at the Reed family estate in New York unannounced. The flight felt different, quiet, reflective. He stared out the window, watching the city lights fade below him, wondering what he would find when he walked through those familiar doors. By the time his car rolled up the long, tree-lined driveway of the mansion, it was past midnight. No one expected him. The staff were caught off guard, hurrying to greet him, but Alex brushed past with a wave of his hand. He didn't want the formalities. This visit wasn't about wealth or appearances. It wasn't about being the billionaire everyone else knew. It was about being a son again, and surprising the one man who had given him everything. When Alex pushed open the heavy front doors and stepped into the marble foyer, he immediately froze. Something didn't feel right. The Reed mansion had always been full of movement, maids polishing the stair rails, butlers shuffling through with silver trays, the faint hum of background conversations. But tonight, it was different. It was quiet. Too quiet. The silence almost pressed against his chest, making each breath feel heavy. His polished shoes clicked against the floor, the sound echoing down the long hallway like he was intruding in his own home. He loosened his tie, his eyes scanning the space, half expecting one of the staff to rush forward and greet him. No one came. Alex's heart picked up speed. Was his father asleep? Or worse, had something happened? He quickened his pace, his footsteps growing louder as he passed portraits of his family hanging along the hallway walls. Each one seemed to stare at him, as if demanding to know why he had stayed away for so long. Then, he heard it. A voice. Soft. Trembling. Barely above a whisper. It floated down the corridor, seeping through the slightly open door of his father's bedroom. Alex slowed, his body tense, straining to listen. It wasn't the deep baritone of a doctor giving instructions. It wasn't the firm, professional tone of a nurse. No, this was different. The voice was gentle, tender, almost breaking with emotion. It carried warmth, sorrow, and something Alex couldn't quite place: love. Every instinct told him to push the door open and see. But for a moment, he just stood there, hand hovering near the knob, heart pounding. Whoever that voice belonged to, it was about to reveal a truth Alex had never expected to find inside his own home. Alex pushed the door open slowly, the hinges groaning in the silence, and what he saw made him stop cold. His father, Henry Reed, lay propped up against white pillows. His body looked frail, his skin pale, but his face was glowing with a fragile smile Alex hadn't seen in years. And sitting right beside him, holding his hand with both of hers, was Grace, the maid Alex barely noticed most days. But she wasn't dusting shelves or tidying the room. No, she was crying. Tears slid down her cheeks as her voice quivered, reading aloud from a worn, leather-bound journal in her lap. Alex's breath caught when he recognized it. The faded brown cover. The delicate handwriting on the pages. It wasn't just a book, it was his mother's diary. The diary of the late Mrs. Reed, the woman Henry had loved all his life, the woman Alex had lost too soon. Every word Grace read carried weight, like it was stitching back together the pieces of Henry's heart. Alex stepped closer, and the sound of his mother's words filled the room, memories of family dinners, love letters she never mailed, prayers she whispered for her son and husband. Henry's eyes shimmered with tears, his frail chest rising and falling, but there was peace in his expression, a peace no medicine, no hospital bed, no expensive treatment had ever given him. Alex's chest tightened painfully. For months he had been throwing money at his father's illness, private doctors, specialists, endless treatments. But standing there, he realized the truth. None of it had made his father feel alive again. Grace had. The maid he had overlooked, the woman he thought was just staff, had given his father the one thing Alex's billions couldn't buy, his wife's voice back. Startled, Grace quickly wiped her tears and tried to rise from the chair. Her lips trembled as she whispered an apology, embarrassed to be caught in such an intimate moment. She had only wanted to comfort Mr. Reed, not overstep her role in the household. But before she could take a single step, Henry's frail hand reached out with surprising strength and gripped hers tightly. His eyes, clouded with age yet burning with sincerity, locked onto hers. And then he spoke, his voice thin, raspy, but filled with weight. "Don't leave. You've given me something my own son forgot, time." The room seemed to fall silent. Alex, standing frozen at the door, felt those words crash into him like a storm. For years, he had believed his responsibility was to provide luxury, comfort, the best doctor's money could buy. He had measured love in dollar signs, thinking expensive care equaled devotion. But his father's trembling voice shattered that illusion. What Henry craved wasn't more machines or prescriptions. It wasn't the marble floors or the private nurses. What he longed for was human presence. A hand to hold. Someone to listen. A reminder that he wasn't just surviving, but still living. Alex's throat tightened. Shame burned in his chest as he realized the truth. Grace, the maid he had barely acknowledged, had given his father what billions could not, her time, her heart, her willingness to sit quietly when the world grew too loud or too lonely. And for the first time in his adult life, Alexander Reed, the billionaire who thought he had everything, understood he had been poor in the one thing that truly mattered, love. That night, Alex didn't leave his father's side. He sat quietly, almost afraid to break the fragile peace in the room. Grace continued reading from the diary, her voice soft but steady, weaving memories of a woman who had once been the heart of their home. Each passage carried the warmth of Alex's late mother, the love letters she wrote, the dreams she had for her family, the prayers she whispered when no one else could hear. For the first time in years, Alex wasn't the billionaire with endless meetings or the man with an empire to protect. He wasn't Silicon Valley's prodigy or Wall Street's headline. He was simply a son again. A son who realized he had been chasing the world while forgetting the very people who had given him everything. Morning sunlight streamed through the tall windows of the dining hall the next day. The long table, polished to perfection, was lined with staff members waiting for instructions. Alex entered, his expression unreadable. The staff straightened, expecting the usual brisk orders. But Alex didn't sit at the head of the table like he always did. Instead, he stood tall, looked at every person in the room, and made a stunning announcement: "This house doesn't run on money. It runs on heart. Last night reminded me of something I lost along the way. Grace isn't just the maid, she's family." The room fell silent. Some gasped, others wiped away tears. Grace stood frozen, her eyes wide with disbelief. And in that single moment, America's youngest billionaire proved something his fortune never could, that true wealth isn't counted in dollars, but in gratitude, love, and the people who remind us what matters most. Sometimes, the richest people aren't those with money, but those with love. If you believe that too, make sure you like, share, and subscribe for more life-changing stories.